Hello, and welcome to the Naked Rooster Garage. My name is Ron. My disclaimer is that I'm an old, senile, disabled, half-crazy person. I may not remember the correct terminology, and I may say something wrong. My thought train might get derailed. I can be long-winded at times. I try to break things down so that even beginners can learn. Hello and welcome to the Naked Rooster Garage. Name sold by my daughter, Mini-Me. Anyhow, so this morning I was driving to Salina, the closest big town around, and when I got into Salina, I kept hearing a grinding noise, especially when I went around corners. It's warm enough today that I actually had the window down, and it appears to be brakes. Not 100% sure yet. I hope it's not a wheel bearing because that's a little more expensive to do. And it takes a little more time. Anyhow, my name is Ron, and I'm going to record what I'm doing here. I'm not going to say what I'm doing is 100% right or wrong. I do things how I know how to do them. My way may not be the right way, and it may not be the way that you do it, but I'm okay with it. You know, you can leave your comments, whatever. Hopefully you leave me some positive comments so that I can improve on my videos. And if you want to leave negative comments, that's fine. I do these videos to train people who have less automotive knowledge than people who work on cars and stuff like that, okay? There could be a 16-year-old, just got his first car, wants to learn how to do things. Or it could be, a 25-year-old who just all of a sudden, or 30-year-old who all of a sudden just decided they want to take an interest in cars. As you know, today's economy, everything is skyrocketing, okay? I feel that more and more people are going to start doing their own automotive work just because of the price of everything. I mean, you can do your own oil change, for example, for, let's say, less than $35. Doing it yourself. Might cost you $100 at a shop, depending on where you go. It also depends on the type of oil you use and the type of filter you use and all that good stuff. I'm not going to get into that right now. So anyhow, I'm hoping that it's just the brakes are kind of worn down, and if it's not, then I'm going to have to go more in depth on it. Right now, this is my primary car, just because it's cheaper on gas, and it's technically my wife's car, but I've been driving it for probably close to a year now. And as you know, gas prices are not going down. They're only going to get worse, unfortunately. So, because this gets the best gas mileage, this is the vehicle I've been using. I work 80 miles from home, round trip. So, gas can get costly. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to get started on this. I already did a video on how to change a tire, and it's probably, well, it's quite lengthy by the time I splice it together. I talk a lot. I have a respiratory problem, so when you see me pausing to get breath, it's because I'm not getting the oxygen I'm supposed to. I should be on oxygen tanks, and I haven't got them yet. So I run out of oxygen quick, but in saying that, I can be long-winded, pun intended, okay? When I get to talking, sometimes I just start rambling on. I'm an old guy, I'm senile. Sometimes I repeat myself because I forgot what I said a minute ago, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Okay, so let's get busy. Nice thing about this impact is it has enough torque that I can raise the vehicle up where the tire spins and still be able to get the lug nuts off. If you get the a nut stuck in a wrench or socket, whatever, you can just partially screw it back on. And that way you have something to actually hold the nut, and then just beat it off. Okay, so this particular vehicle, it's a 2011 Chevy Impala, and it has four-wheel disc brakes. Disc brakes are much easier to work on, as most people that have worked on them will attest to. Excuse me. So I already know that sometime this summer I'm going to end up replacing these rotors here, just because there's some pitting in them. Do I need to replace them? No. I could run them for hell, another 100,000 miles if I wanted to. But my front end acted up on this car, and I ended up having a shop replace the rack and pinion. I didn't have a lift or the time to do it, because it'd take me a couple days, or 3 or 4 days. So this car sat for a while, and the rotors rusted a bit, and because of the rust did a little bit of pitting when I put the new brakes on it, which I haven't put on actually. They're new. They were new brakes, but it's been a while. Anyhow, it wore the rust off, but in the process, it put a little bit of fine grooves in here, and the pitting is actually still there. So I'm hoping that all it is, not my grinding, is from the brake shoes itself. The rust and stuff on there, that it might have worn down a bit more. So the disc brakes are pretty easy to do, and this is called a caliper. All right. Obviously, this is a rotor. And almost all disc brakes have 2 bolts of some sort holding the main part where your piston is and your brake pads go. Once you get the 2 bolts out, you can generally pry this straight off. Different vehicles have different ways of compressing the piston, and I'll show you that once I get these off, because I got to take these off anyhow. Some of these, the bolts that hold them on are like takes a hex wrench, Allen wrench. Some of them take a socket. I don't think I've seen one with a star set up yet. But anyhow, so you just have to kind of see what's what. And I believe, and they're not all the same size either. This particular one is metric 14. And there's different ways you can loosen this up. If it was really tight and I'm using a wrench like this, I would actually put this wrench on here, and then I use this as my cheater bar. I just slide it in here like this, and it gives me a little more leverage. Doesn't always work, but that's with a wrench. If you're using a socket, a breaker bar, and a socket, and break it loose, but I'm just going to use an open box end wrench. And there are torque specifications that these should be torqued down to. I have a quote-unquote calibrated wrist. I just tighten it down as tight as I can get it. Okay. I haven't lost a bolt yet. Now, where it really matters, torque specifications, is on engines when you're doing, heads and stuff like that, and pretty much anything when you're building an engine. You want to use the proper torque specifications, just because it's there for a reason. And if you don't get your heads torqued down to the right amount, you could have a leaky head gasket, or you may tighten one bolt down really tight and the other one not so tight, and your heads could warp with the heat and stuff like that. Okay, so this particular, this is the piston area right here for the brakes, and what it does is you have the hydraulic pressure when you push the pedal. It has a lever that pushes in, and it creates hydraulic pressure through your brake lines that comes back here to your brakes. Or actually, I should say, it goes to all your brakes equally. Okay. As the pressure is applied, this brake cylinder here, piston, I should say, brake piston, okay, it pushes out, and okay, I'm going to have to get a light and look at this, but anyhow, what it does is on the rotor you have your brake pad set on either side of the rotor. Okay, the one that's on this side is pretty much, it doesn't move. Okay, and by doesn't move, I mean it doesn't go in and out. Okay, until brake pressure is applied, or hydraulic pressure is applied. Or we'll just say brake pressure, because that's, you're pushing the brake pedal. Okay, so this piston, these bolts are holding it in here, and you have little sliders in here. Okay, as this piston is pushed out, these two brakes are compressed. It's pulled from the outside up against this, and from the inside, from the piston, is actually pushing the other brake pad up against the rotor. Therefore, that's where you get your clamping pressure on the rotor, and it slows you down. When you let off the brake, what's supposed to happen is this piston is supposed to go at least back in a little bit. Okay, it shouldn't go all the way back in, but the pressure is released. It goes back to what it was before the pressure was applied. Okay, and it's really a very small increment. I don't know what it is, so don't ask. Okay, anyhow, and then this here will slide back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Okay, so as the pressure is released, this should slide back out this way just a smidgen, and the piston will go back in just a smidgen. And what that does is that keeps your brakes from constantly... That was dumb. Anyhow, I'll probably do it again, so no lesson learned on that. Anyhow, so that keeps your brake pads from rubbing constantly, because the more they rub, the more they wear down. And I'm gonna have to get my light to see, but from what I'm looking at here, I would say my inside brake pad is possibly, the pad is non-existing. Okay, so brake pads are pretty easy to remove. I was trying to pry this off before, and wasn't coming, so I stopped the video so I could figure out what was going on. Basically, it was just stuck in there. Okay, so what I do is I just take a little flat tip screwdriver and pry it out. Okay, some would probably disagree with me, but this brake pad is not bad. Okay, I don't know how well you can see it. I'm going to change these anyhow, so I'm not worried about, you know, and I'll show you in a minute why I'm going to change them. Well, why I have to change them. Generally, if they're like this is your brake pad right here. Okay, there's plenty of pad on here. The biggest thing that happens with a pad that, and if you have brake problems, the biggest thing that happens with the pad when you still have plenty of the pad left and your stopping is not that great, one of two things. Either you have air in your brake lines, which you need to bleed out. I'm not going to show you how to do that right now. It takes two people also. Or the other thing is your brake pad has got hot, and I call it glazed. I'm not sure the proper term of it. That might be the proper term. But it becomes extremely hardened and smooth. Most of the time that happens when people ride their brakes all the time. Me, myself, I only use the brakes when I absolutely necessarily need to. So brake pads for me usually last several years. Actually, I think I've only changed these once. Hence, that's why it's grinding. Sorry about blocking the camera there. I just wanted to move my tools so I can get to them a little bit better. Okay, so this brake pad here is not bad. Now, this one was kind of stuck. All right, so this is what a brake pad should not look like. Now ask yourself, where's the brake pad? Okay, yeah, it's not there. So, by comparison, side by side, you can see the difference. The only thing left here is the metal, so that's what's been grinding is the metal. I don't know if that's because the caliper, which is what this is called, and the piston has been sticking. Okay. Anyhow, not sure, but I'll diagnose that here in a minute. But anyhow, as you can see, this brake pad is toast. Okay, you should never let them get like that. And had I have known it would have been that bad, I would have changed it before now. But it has been cold, so I'm going to make an excuse. I'm old. I can do that. My excuse is that it's been too cold for me to do much maintenance, and I don't have heat in my garage. And when it gets down to, you know, well, technically when it gets down to 30 and below, I don't come to the garage. So, if that one's bad, you can pretty much automatically assume that the other one is. Let me see if I can, I'm going to try to get you in here and show you what, I don't really have a spot. I'm gonna stop it for a minute and then take it off the stand. I have it on a tripod right now, so it's not so shaky. I'm gonna take it off and I'm gonna try to hopefully be able to show you what happens to the rotor when they start wearing like that. Oh, here's another thing. Here's another tip too. Right now I'm not concerned about it because I have the parking brake cable on this. Anytime you take your brake caliper off, just get you a piece of wire, doesn't matter what kind, and run it through one of the bolts and find you a hole and just tie it up there. Reason being is because when it's laying down, like I said, I got the parking brake cable on it, so it's not really going to drop. But as the brake hose or the caliper is hanging on it, if your brake hose is deteriorated in any to any degree, you run a risk of it falling apart. Okay, start leaking. It might come out of here, may come out of there. It may just, you know, crack open. You don't want that. So just run your wire through there and hook it up somewhere. In this case, I'd hook it right here on the fender, just so it's up out of the way. Doesn't matter which hole you use, just something it's out of your way and it's not creating pressure on your brake line. All right, not sure how well you can see this, but if you look right here, this thing has a pretty deep groove in it. It's not the worst I've ever seen, but it's pretty bad. And what that is from is this part, the shinier part of this brake pad, was actually rubbing against the bottom of that. Okay, so the brake pad was probably pushing more on the front than on the back. Can't say that for sure. The other thing too is if you notice, there was a rivet here that held the brake pad on, so there's a real good chance that that possibly is what created the groove. I'm no engineer or scientist or anything else, but that would be my deduction, my hypothesis, my theory, whatever you want to call it. Anyhow, so definitely going to have to replace the rotor and the brake pads on this side. All right, so I am definitely going to have to replace this rotor. I have not replaced the rotor on the back of this. Therefore, to be honest, while I have an idea, I do not know exactly how to replace it. But these are little clips that help hold your brake pads in. If I remember correctly, they actually come with those in the brakes. Anyhow, excuse me. Anyhow, I've done many different types of disc brakes, and pretty much they all are similar in how you take them apart. When I get ready to do this, I'll actually do a video on it, but on this particular vehicle, on this particular rear end here, I have 2 bolts on the caliper bracket that I have to take loose. Ooh, I just realized one of my sliders is stuck. Okay. WD-40 or some kind of penetrant. Anyhow, so back to I lost my train of thought. I'm old and senile. It's my story. I'm sticking to it. Anyhow, so on this particular one, I noticed it has a star screw here. Okay, so I'm assuming that I'm going to have to take that screw out. Once I get this off, I'll take that out, and I should be able to just pull that straight off.